Welcome to tomorrow's Tech Today, bringing you the latest in technology, talent, and transformational change. With me, your host, Professor Sally Eaves. Hi everyone, I'm Professor Sally Eaves, and a very warm welcome to this Tomorrow's Tech Today special feature on all things network infrastructure and sites and the increasingly important relationship, indeed the impact this is having on energy resilience or energy robustness. And I think with the current energy crisis we're facing, from a consumer perspective and equally a business and ecosystem partner one, this has never mattered more. And with Ericsson setting their ambition to be net zero right across their value chain by 2040, I'm really delighted to be joined by a special guest who I think is exceptionally well placed to dive into all those details. So it's a warm welcome to Martin Högberg, who is head of site at Ericsson. Welcome to you, Martin.
Thanks a lot, Sally. Interesting topic you chosen. It's very close to what we do at Ericsson right now. So we're facing the same type of challenges and demands from the market.
Absolutely. It really is one of the timeliest topics of our time, I think, right now. And before we go into some main questions around this, I'd love just to share a little bit more about the person behind the tech, so to speak. And perhaps you could just share a little detail about your role at Ericsson and maybe a moment that's mattered along the way. I think it's nice to get that personal perspective.
Yeah. Well, I'm heading up product line site. That means I'm responsible for all the infrastructure parts of our radio access network. So I have a global portfolio. It's not consisting of the actual RAN components like the radio or baseband or transport active electronics. It's everything that's required except that in order to roll out Ericsson radio system. And that is, of course, everything that goes to optical distribution, power conversion, housing of electronics, lithium-ion battery backup. So it's a big portfolio, and globally it goes along with the radio access network.
Fantastic. Thank you. Takes me back to my days being a CTO in telco as well. So I was very much, looking at RAN, IT and IS and things like that, and also from a change management perspective. And I'd love to go right into that, if I may, as well. So we use these terms a lot, don't we, when we talk about technology? But for our audience today, and maybe people who are not so familiar with what some of these terms actually mean, perhaps we could start today by really explaining, what a network is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we are talking about a lot of different Gs. Now we're up in the 5th G. So it's the 5th generation, we could say, of a mobile network. And obviously this consists of, it's a radio access network. So it's the cellular technology connecting the end user devices, but also machine to machine type of communication. And with 5G, we are adding more and more frequencies, so bandwidth of the air interface, meaning that we also push the boundaries when it comes to number of gigabits or megabytes that we can send over the air interface, and also in a very lean and efficient way comparing the earlier Gs. So we are also optimizing more and more the portfolio to be lean towards lean towards energy, but also lean towards how we use the air interface to a very efficient way.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think that really brings to the fore your answer there, the convergence that's happening at the moment across technologies in the network. And again, those shared value benefits. So from optimizing efficiency for the business, but equally optimizing that reduction of consumption for society as well. And definitely drill more into that shortly too. And maybe the next part of that kind of setting the scene process is to dive a little more into sites. And just explain for everyone listening what a site actually is, what's needed to make that a reality and make it all come together.
Yeah. I mean, for us, site in this context means obviously a physical location where we then have telecom equipment, and rather often today, I would say, close to where we actually visually could see the antennas. So behind those antennas, we could say on that physical site, we also often see number of radios transmitting then in number of different frequency bands, and also connecting to compute type of equipment, rather often referred to as basebands, being the let's say the brain in that site, communicating towards the radius and also managing traffic over different frequency bands, and of course also between different sites. So all these different sites are then also connected to each other we could say, in a homogeneous mobility system. So the sites, let's say 90% of the sites are on rooftops or mast-mounted type of sites, but we also see sites below rooftops being in play more often, and also then with lower upper power and also closer to the end user in order to get increased performance, being closer towards the end user.
Absolutely. So really, again, bringing forward this acceleration of innovation around the network at the moment. I love that kind of, it's almost like an orchestra that you were describing there with all those many different parts kind of moving together and the adjustments that are being made to give those extra benefits around performance and reduce latency, but equally that leanness of the network that you're bringing to the fore now. I think that's a lovely conduit to kind of drill into that in more detail. So a big focus of our conversation today, and frankly for everyone, I think right now, is around energy resilience or energy robustness. I'd love to drill into exactly how that relates to networks. So what does it mean for a network to be energy robust? And what does that mean from an energy storage point of view, things like climate control, etc.? If we could get into some tangibles about that relationship, I think that'd be a great next step.
Yeah, I think before I start on my special area, which is then site infrastructure, I'm thinking also that the radio access network is, I mean, that's the biggest consumer. That is what we power with energy in order to have the mobile network. But also there, Ericsson are very in the forefront when it comes to designing our own ASICs that goes into the compute of the baseband. It goes into the compute part of the radio units nowadays with 5G as well. So having a lean, forward-leaning technology investments is super important when it comes to actually being able to spin off platforms and products on this advanced technology, because that also is then the drive in order to actually build hardware for the radio access network and software that are able to execute in as low energy or being energy optimized as possible. So I think that is one thing. And when it comes also then to play right now, I think it's important for our customers or the CSPs to have, let's say, maybe not so easy to always have the latest gear out there, but there is like a modernization and activity that also will give you a good energy efficiency by being on a as late infrastructure as possible when it comes to the actual radios and the baseband compute parts. But there I also believe that the networks will become even more advanced when it comes to AI, automation, steering how we should run the radio access network based on traffic demand. But then when it comes to the site infrastructure, there are a mix of operators out there, how much of they have invested and how, let's say, forward-leaning they are in the actual infrastructure part of it as well, because there are power conversions to be done, and that we can do up to 98% of efficiency. So if you are down on 93%, you could actually gain 5% by just being on the latest technology also in the infrastructure part. And also how we can distribute energy towards the radios in an efficient way by having higher voltage distribution to reduce the losses in the power distribution in the cables. There is also ways how we can optimize the power supply units to run on an efficient, make sure that they are running on their optimized efficiency curve. There is also things that with lithium technology, the lithium in say is actually 10% more efficient when it comes than comparing with lead. Let's say taking energy or charge the batteries and discharge the batteries, the lithium technology in say is 10% more efficient compared to lead acid. And right now we're also having a lot of dialogues with customers in regards to renewable energy. So let's say adding solar cells, adding windmill in order to offload and get renewable energy into the telecom sites. That might be difficult on specific dense urban sites, but we are running with multiple of different customers globally right now. And one of them that we have gone out externally is with Deutsche Telekom, where we have a proof point site where we actually have 25% renewable energy as energy source into that. And then we have hybrid management. So we steer if we should run from the battery, if we should run from the grid, or we should run from the renewable energy source. And also, of course, to take care of the renewable energy to charge the batteries or to use that power for the radio access network. But there's one thing that is right now super interesting, I think, that the CSPs have many sites. They consume approximately 3 to 7 kilowatts, depending on how high capacity they are, but in thousands. But in those thousands, there is actually a possibility to be part of energy management up towards the power grid. The more renewable energy a country put into to the power grid, there needs to be even more balancing between what energy are produced and how much energy is consumed. So then there are services in the energy area, not so familiar maybe today with telecoms, but there are services where we believe we can tap into and be part and help a CSP, let's say, switch off 1,000 or switch off 3,000 sites when the energy grid is at its peak. That could be 7 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The CSP can be part of energy manage the power grid. And by doing that, either get a kickback money-wise or get an OPEX reduction. So this is an area that we are exploring more and more right now, and also due to the situation we are in right now, maybe especially in Europe in regards to energy, this is rather top of mind amongst many of our CSPs. And I think also this is a natural journey where there is let's say a need to modernize and make sure that you have the latest infrastructure in place. Also infrastructure becoming more and more connected, so you can do more and more remote from the OSS NOC also towards the infrastructure. But there also it's a natural way to modernize, make sure you have the latest gear, but also to add lithium battery banks compared to lead acid. And the lithium, with being able to massage the lithium batteries to several thousand times, this makes it possible to do also for telecoms. So by doing energy services is one thing, but you can also think of that you actually disconnect from the grid, maybe when the tariff is high, and charge the batteries when the tariff is lower. So there are a lot of different things that can be done with help of new technologies such as lithium, I believe.
I love that. And I love the kind of range of examples you brought to the fore there. So on the one hand, it's kind of that informed consumption by demand and being able to adjust to that you were describing there. Also taking innovation from different verticals, like with lithium, and applying it to telecoms, the technology itself and the convergence, particularly around AI and machine learning and the support that can give. And obviously, other design choices. I'm thinking also things like generative manufacturing, generative design to support that as well. So you can be more agile to change, you can deeply explore materials and find those right choices and the difference that can make too. So all of those things coming together, and also the power of that collective too, that you were really bringing to the fore, how we can make a difference coming together. The grid example you gave there too. So that really fits into what I was talking about earlier, for example, about Ericsson's commitment to this. And I was reading as part of your new research around energy as well. You're estimating and really committed to this reduction of energy consumption from any kind of typical site size by around 40% from 2021 to 25. I think is super impressive. And as you were saying there, with this use of more renewable energy sources, that can make a huge difference too. So I was reading there something like a reduction of 70% around CO2 emissions by making that type of informed choice, enabled by all those different elements you were bringing to the fore there. So I think that's fantastic. And I was going to ask you next, actually, about different things that operators can do to make a difference. And you've naturally gone into some of those areas already, but I wonder if we could bring out a few more specific examples. So what I really liked was about your peak load shifting support approach. I thought that was excellent around that offloading and stabilization, but also things around sleep modes for hardware, those things that really enable informed choices, particularly around consumption, and kind of help to break that curve. If we could explore those tangibles a little bit more, I think that'd be fantastic to bring to life really what you can do today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now, as of today, we started the conversation. Let's say, make sure that you modernize and have at least the latest gears that are more energy efficient. It's straightforward. Implement radio access network energy efficient features like microsleep TX. We can also put the radios in deep sleep, meaning they would consume, should we say, 5 to 10% maybe of its peak power or normal power. So when they are in deep sleep, they would consume maybe 30 to 50 watts, which is very, very low. And I think also maybe there is a mindset shift, that we maybe need to change from KPI operating in something that are more sustainable. Without, let's say, I think the service layer will still be there. You wouldn't really notice if there is a balance or downturn in that efficiency of the RAN per se. But you maybe can run the RAN even more efficient from an energy perspective. And I mean, our intention is always not to disturb or decrease the performance of the radio access network, but maybe still there is a bit of mindset shift maybe needed also from planning perspective when we run the networks. So that I think for sure is something short term that can be done. There are a lot of features also maybe not always implemented in the CSP radio access networks. So I think by, let's say, evaluating and, let's say, use the word auditing what you have out in field and what type of features that are enabled, I think there is a gain short term to save. But if we should then go towards an even more advanced infrastructure with lithium battery banks, it will take a while until we have that deployed in big scale. It's something we see are adding more and more. The trend is going upwards for sure, but there is maybe normally there's a little bit less focus on the infrastructure part compared to the RAN. But I believe that is something to happen, and also make sure that we optimize and run the future networks even more with AI and automation between hardware, software, and also the infrastructure to connect all that into a common orchestration.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love the way that you put in that point about reflection, that pause for thought. I think so many verticals are doing that right now, whether it's kind of the best use of space, as the hybrid working model continues to evolve, also affected by energy crisis, with electricity at home and that type of thing. And in so many areas, that pause for thought to benchmark exactly where you are, really understand how your different components fit together, look at it from a cultural, a process, a change management point of view, and stop to think and also measure that progress along the way. I think it's so important. And I thought, actually, Martin, we could do something a little bit different now in this episode as well, kind of like change seats, if you will. So I thought I'd throw it over to you if you wanted to ask me a couple of questions as well, kind of from a wider industry take about what's happening.
No, I'm super interested, as you have so many, let's say, you're into so many different forums, and I guess your top of mind is also in the area of energy, but it would be nice to hear a bit on what rest of the ecosystem within telecoms are debating on different forums or different platforms. That would be super interesting to hear back from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the first place I would start is how many service providers are asking about this, how much of a resonance now, all things around the sustainable development goals, but sustainability in particular. There's a real consciousness of doing more, and not just being transparent about doing more and the need to do that, but backing that up, with true commitment and accountability and delivering on that along the way. So this evolving consciousness, I would say, about consumers, but also the ecosystem partners that we work with as well, right across supply chains. This has changed. It really has become not something on the periphery anymore, but something that's very much center stage. And also I'm seeing much more of a resonance, so I use that word again, in terms of the fact that this is something that creates shared value. We don't look at things like ESG and sustainability in particular as something over here that just does stuff for the planet. People are understanding this is the way forward, to do good, do well by doing good. It's good for planet, it's good for profit, and it's good for that shared purpose as well, So I'm seeing this evolution of shared value business models that are really bringing that together. Also, recognition of the challenges to make something like this happen. Again, there's some commonality, I would say, there. So complexity, definitely right up there. But particularly when it comes to, the different integrations we've been talking about today, how do you ensure you've got that single pane of glass visibility across the different aspects of infrastructure, ensuring the tech integration? Visibility, integration right up there, reducing complexity, and obviously doing all this in a secure way too. But over and above all other things, I would say, when it comes to sustainability outcomes and the SDGs more broadly, it's measurement. We have KPIs for so many things, don't we? But when it comes to more social impact type areas, it can be a bit more complex. And I'm seeing a lot more, investment in this now, and making sure that's externally facing as well as internal. So, if you're looking at carbon emissions, you need to look at that from an internal and external scope perspective. It's not just one or the other. So helping people make more informed choices. You can't just have an ESG report that's internally facing, and although that's great and it's transparent and it's showing progress, it needs to be backed up by that more holistic take and that regular benchmarking along the way. So that, for example, there's a new index that I've kind of been founded actually that launches early next year, and that's very much, it's kind of nicknamed Rosie, so it's return on social impact evaluated, and that's literally doing that type of activity, helping to make those comparable choices. So that's something definitely comes to the fore for me on this topic. And then obviously in terms of going from challenge to solution, definitely that smart measurement I was talking about there. I think we've naturally talked about this convergence of technology, the kind of age of smart technology convergence, as I call it, but also underpinning that by smart learning too. A lot of what we talk about today, it means role evolution, particularly at C-suite. We also have a lot of middle managers at the moment who are kind of juggling that agency role between, onboarding on one perspective, really important right across the C-suite on the other, but being quite hard pressed in terms of time, in terms of overload in many cases as well. So supporting people at all those different levels with the new skills needed to be a modern leader. And equally, people in non-tech facing roles, data literacy absolutely matters in all that we're talking about today. Making that available to everyone in an organization, I think, is absolutely key. And also building not just skills accessibility, but skills confidence too, the ability to apply them, to be agile to change and agile to these new evolving needs, like the delivery around sustainability, for example. So as my highlights for a couple of minutes there, that's kind of my key takeaway so far.
Any specific market, region, country that you see are more in the forefront driving?
Absolutely. So one very concrete example of that was about a month ago, I came back from Luxembourg and I did a keynote in Parliament with their Prime Minister, which was the launch of a new digital transformation strategy. And what I loved about that was everybody in the room had an ecosystem investment to what was happening. And there was a huge focus both on sustainability and inclusion at this particular launch. And as I say, everybody's view was represented. So you obviously had Parliament there. I was there as a kind of external expert alongside the OECD, but you also had people from schools, from a young person representative, elderly citizens, etc., etc. Everywhere along the board, a voice was there to be heard and had equal value. And I love the way that was being done. It was truly inclusive, collaborative. And I've never seen something delivered to that extent in that kind of setting beforehand, and backed up by, back there in 2 weeks' time. It's all happening. There's momentum, there's collaboration. And again, some organizations you might think of traditionally as competitors, for example, were coming together for that common aim. So it's a great example of leadership, I think, and what you can do by coming together.
Yeah, really nice to hear. Yeah, sounds really promising, I must say.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I think my probably final kind of takeaway on that, just thinking about a little bit more in terms of some of the priorities for communities that are interested in this at the moment as well. I think sometimes I see an intention and action gap. So both from personal experience of speaking and working with different service providers and obviously different consumer groups, etc. as well, but also research I've been directly involved in and helped to develop in certain cases too. So as an example, when it comes to energy, we're seeing this rise of consciousness that this really matters, and we want to do more as an organization, not just in telecoms, but all verticals. It's pretty consistent. But when it comes to the actualization, that when it comes back to those challenges I mentioned earlier, that's when it can get a little bit sticky, a little bit complex, and particularly for some of the smaller organizations who are equally important in the supply chain too. That can be when it gets a little bit overwhelmed, which is why I mentioned about this measurement, because not only does it help you, know and understand where you are now and where you can get to and those steps along the way, it makes it more incremental, more manageable. Equally, it helps you get buy-in. It helps show the value of what you're doing. It helps you share that narrative and get other people on board with you too, which I think is also really important. So yeah, for me, I think what people are talking about in communities at the moment is more tangibles about the how, sharing examples of impact where this has been brought to light so we can learn from that. And definitely this community piece, I think it's probably, for me, it's the biggest learning point from the pandemic. We've seen what we can do by coming together. Things like the HPC consortium, which was around healthcare innovation, particularly around the vaccine. We've pivoted approach like that. It's the leading tech companies of our time, citizen scientists, governments, councils, universities, etc. So all the different elements of business and society coming together, having a voice and acceleration innovation curves, obviously in that case in terms of health. Let's apply that to other problems like we're seeing with sustainability at the moment. If we do that, we can create a contagion of positive change, I would say, that will last. So yeah, I'm really excited about the prominence this is getting, the work that, telecoms is the hub of the wheel to make all of this happen in every other vertical, really. It really is such a driver of change. So I think the leadership that Ericsson's showing here is so important to make a difference. So yeah, it's been a joy to speak about this today, because I think the momentum is clear. The trajectory, it's an imperative, and it's great to see the movement we're having here.
Oh, I fully agree, Sally. It's super interesting, I think. And also for us within Ericsson, we are rather much of a technology company. So we solve the issues, let's say, or the challenges with help of technology. So for our sake, let's say, or how we think about this is to drive and come up with smart, innovative ways to efficiently run the radio access network. And that goes across, and super interesting. I think right now we are having enormous focus, not to say we haven't, but I think all industries are increasing top of mind when it comes to energy and energy efficiency. So there's a lot of things happening. So I think it looks bright. At the same time, there is also a need of telecoms, right? So all would like to have an enormous capacity, low latency, connections everywhere. So it's up to our responsibility to make sure that we develop this to become as lean as possible and draw as much less energy as possible.
Absolutely. I think, as I was saying just now, I see the telco sector as that hub of the wheel. Every other vertical, get this right. It is the pillars. It's the foundation for success around pretty much every area of SDG impact. Inclusion be another one. The Connect to Learn program that Ericsson is helped found, I think, is a great example of that as well. This connectivity, particularly to the level of benefits we've been talking about today, it's the imperative to move forward, and it is a shared value proposition for everyone. So I'm excited about where we're heading here, Martin, and obviously also the new research that's come out as well, talking about this in more detail, breaking the energy curve. That is a great asset as well. So we'll definitely share that with the audience as well, so people can dig into the details and kind of personalize it to them and where they are in their journey too. Because again, they say knowledge is power, don't they? But in this case, it really is. It really helps to learn, to understand how expectations and behaviors are evolving, and different examples of what you can do from a technology point of view, from education, from a culture, from a change management point of view as well. It's all of those things holistically coming together that makes this scale and sustain. So I think that's a very valuable resource too.
Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah, nice
Fantastic.
conversation with you, Sally.
My absolute pleasure. Well, thank you so much, Martin, for joining me here today on Tomorrow's Tech Today. Thank you all for listening and watching too. I think for me, we've really seen kind of the breadth, the broadness of the site portfolio offered by Ericsson here. And it's really impacting through all the different ways we've talked about, from tech, from skills, from culture, from process, from education, with the resources like the Energy Report. All of this is coming together, and it can deliver shared value benefits. So, at the end of the day, for some of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest of our time, that is around sustainability and climate change. It's clear that every sector of society, we have to come together, we have to work together to address challenges like global climate and the energy crisis that's affecting pretty much every single one of us today. And let's be positive. We've seen what we can do by coming together, and we have the opportunities here for clear leadership and to make a difference in very tangible ways. And clearly the network is right at the heart of making this a reality. So thank you so much, and look forward to joining you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice conversation. Thank you.
My pleasure, Martin. I think we might. Thanks for listening to this episode of Tomorrow's Tech Today. If you enjoy what we're doing, please subscribe to us and leave a review. It really means a lot. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram and see more behind the scenes video footage on YouTube. Thanks for listening.